Thank you, Angela, for the nice introduction, and I can't wait to hear the little secrets of Bryan and Doc. But I would like to welcome everyone to our third day of our EsportsU Coaches and Director Summit. And joining me today is Bryan Hummel, Lucas Hayworth, and Chris Bilski. We're going to be talking about recruitment. And Bryan, if you want to start, just introduce yourself and a little bit about you, and then we'll go on to Lucas and Chris.
Hi, I'm Bryan Hummel, the Director of Esports at Fisher College. We're located in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm also an instructor for esports classes at Emerson College.
Hey everyone, I'm Lucas Hayworth. I'm the Director of Esports at OC Esports or Oklahoma Christian University.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chris Bilski. I'm the Director of Esports at Michigan State University in East Lansing, Michigan.
And thank you all for joining us today and taking the time to discuss about recruitment. So I'll just start with Bryan. Before we get to secret sharing, can you tell everyone the difference in scholarships that you offer, if it's full-time, partials, and how does this work for each of you?
Yeah, sure. We have various different scholarships, and it kind of goes game by game. So with our publisher-sponsored titles like League of Legends and Rocket League and Valorant, we're able to give full tuition scholarships out, housing grants, things along that nature. And then for the ones that are non-publisher sponsored titles, which you can never really guarantee 4 years of competition out, we'll go upwards of 75% off of tuition on those, and it'll trickle down. And yeah, that's really how we do it. It's based off of previous academics, their in-game accolades, and various other factors of if we need that role going. So
And Lucas?
Yeah, so I'm just going to answer a couple of the questions here on the base by base. We have about 95 students in the program right now, and 80 of them are on scholarship. So to kind of give more context, for the first year when I started this program back in December of 2019, I was a student. I just graduated my undergrad, got hired on as a GA, building out this program from the ground up with nothing existing. So it was me and 3 Rocket League people that I found. We ended that first year at 16 students, and then I started recruiting, and we went up to 34. Then year 3 we're at 66, and now we're at 95 in year 4. So we've been growing pretty consistently over the years. We started with just one team, and now we have 14 different titles. And how the scholarships work, they're definitely on a case by case basis. We have average numbers that we work with all the different titles, but I'm mostly scholarship defined based on their potential, the defined skill set, and the determination to place them at a good level that's most beneficial for where they're at.
And Chris?
Yeah, similar to kind of what Lucas said, our scholarships are a little bit on a case by case basis. So, it can be more or less depending on the student that we're working with. I will say that we're blessed in that, just with some of the people on the panels here, it feels like our programs have a significant amount of resources. And I know that's not true for all the programs out there. I'm working at Michigan State now, but before that, I was at a D2 school, D3 school, and an NAIA school where we had significantly less resources, right? So, a lot of programs are dealing with either no scholarships or small scholarships, but currently at Michigan State, partial up to full, depending on the potential of the student.
And Chris, how many students are in the program now and how many are on scholarship? Do you remember what year 1 was like and how much you grew?
Yeah, so this is really year 1 for us. So Michigan State for a long time has just had a club program. Me being hired at Michigan State was really the university taking the next step to support esports. So we're launching 3 different varsity titles: Rocket League, Valorant, and Smash, and we'll have roughly 25 students total for those titles. We're providing scholarships not only for our incoming recruits, but we're also providing walk-on scholarships as well for the students that have already been at Michigan State.
And Bryan, I know at Fisher it's year 2. Has any numbers have changed since last year?
yeah, so I actually started at Fisher July of last year, and we had 102 students in the program for this whole year, and then we're at 223 coming into this fall, so we're looking pretty good. Like 14 different games, just like Lucas. We're in pretty much every game that you can get into. So, and as far as that, we have 32 students on full tuition scholarships, and then the rest are, partial scholarships and things like that.
And Lucas, what has been
Yeah.
most effective for you in recruiting students?
Yeah, this is gonna be a long one. So you need a little bit of context first, in order to kind of understand my recruiting style, what I do, all that stuff. And most of it is just about the college itself. So for us being Oklahoma Christian University, we're into NCAA D2. We're full on campus, in person institution. We have a couple of hybrid classes, a couple of adult learning college courses, but most of them, especially being in athletics, you have to live on campus or within a 50-mile radius to even participate in the program. So we have a very traditional academic and athletic experience. We're housed under athletics as a club sport. And so I'm able to pull athletic level scholarships, just like our basketball, our futsal, our swim, etc. And we're really able to kind of pinpoint those most effective ways by already looking at what athletics does for their traditional sports and just kind of tying it into esports. So having a high value add campus, we're like one of the top locations in Oklahoma, I think the top right now rated wise. We have very high level academic programs. We have a very high graduation rate. Um, we pass the national average in terms of pretty much every single one of our stats, especially for private, non-for-profit 4-year universities. We're very, very high up there just as a school itself. So recruiting really takes just having a good stat line really takes the weight off of recruiting for me, because I know that the school itself can kind of sell itself, and everything that I do as a director for esports really is just an added value benefit to the students that I bring on. So I really have been building this from year one based off of my 3, 5, and 10-year vision. And I've been able to execute very well on all of those. And I've been able to follow up with all of those different points. And I can go into that later, but it's not really pertinent right now. But for recruiting, the main ways is that I really target students that would never even consider coming to a private 4-year Christian college. Almost all of my students, over 90 that I've recruited over the 4 years, are non-traditional, non-secular. They're very different. They themselves are a very different student body from the rest of the students that attend OC. And so it's been super effective for me to kind of create our own culture, create our own incentives, create our own value in my program, and not fully isolate ourselves, but set ourselves as a higher and new standard compared to the rest of campus. And so there's different methods that we also use to recruit. Discord, obviously, by far is the easiest way to get in contact with most students. Every game has its own unique culture, as Brian definitely knows. And so being able to kind of be tapped into all 14 to maybe it's realistically more like 16 different titles and know their culture, know the bubble scene, know the amateur scene, understand the pathway to amateur and pro, and be able to target competitive students at those levels is, for me, that's been super effective, and I know it's been effective for both Brian and a few others as well. So kind of speaking to the crowd here, but Discord, online services, all that stuff is definitely the most effective way. There are other slightly effective ways, like different college fairs and recruiting, being able to go and talk with high schools, that kind of stuff. And every school is going to have their own independent and different niche. The main thing is understanding what your target audience is. If your school is giving you a quota to recruit X number of students, you want to make sure that you're not double tapping into the same recruiting pool that admissions already taps into. You want to develop a unique pipeline. You want to develop a unique pathway that you can then go and show to the students, go to show to the administration actually, that my students are big value add and they are non-traditional. They would not have considered to come here if not for esports. And then that can help sell your program even further and get you more support, et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you, Lucas. And it's kind of interesting how you touched upon being a private school. So, Chris, being a public school, what has been most effective for you?
Yeah, I think that like for any program, you want to lean into your strengths, right? And so for Michigan State University, our strengths is our academics. You know, we're a top 10 ranked university when it comes to communication arts, like in the world. We got the number one ranked game development program for a public university in the country, right? Like we have really, really strong academic programs that are around making games, or when it goes into the creation of games. And so for me, if that's my strength, that's something that I'm going to lean into, right? There might be for other programs, they may have different strengths. And so leaning into those, finding out what your niche is, what works best for you, and working within that. And so for us, understanding that that's our strength, and even the fact that I'm kind of housed under an academic college here at Michigan State University, I'm really looking for students who value those same things, right? I'm looking for students who are looking for a quality education, right? They look at esports as an opportunity for the next 4 years to set them up for success for the next 40 years. And so, like example, our incoming recruits this year, I think our average GPA is over a 4.0, which just tells you kind of the profile of students that we're looking for, and the profile of students who are interested in our type of programs. Really excited about what we have building here at Michigan State. Like I said, this is the first year for us, so we're just launching the program. But yeah, talking about how do you connect with different people, just as Lucas said, there's a variety of different ways, whether it's Discord, social media, going out to local events, whether that's high school competitions, whatever that might be, or on the flip side, inviting people to your own space, right? Inviting local high schools, uh, trying to have events and competitions at your space as well.
Thank you, Chris. And Bryan, can you share a bit of how Fisher recruits and how it structures itself to best recruit? And what are some of your best practices?
Sure, absolutely. So at Fisher, we're in a unique position, and I think Lucas actually hit a lot of this, straight on point. But what we do that differs from others is we try to meet students in the middle of where they want to be. So, for us, we offer online programs, in-person programs, a hybrid. They could be an online student, live in Boston, the whole 9 yards. And similar to Lucas, what we're doing is we're bringing in students that probably didn't have college on their radar. They weren't thinking that college was an option. They might not have been able to afford it. And then using their skills in gaming, we're able to provide them those opportunities. And, something that's a little bit different about us, I know schools like Maryville and stuff are like this, but we're housed under the president's office. So, as far as oversight and whatnot, I get to report directly to him. So, it makes it a little bit easier when I need to get things done. So, if we're doing fundraising or we need to up a student scholarship or, meet somebody in the middle, it's very easy to just go directly to the top and, get what we need. And as far as like how we recruit, Discord's a big way. Understanding that amateur ecosystem, a lot like Lucas was saying. Um, the big thing that we just did is we hired a new person who's actually being announced tomorrow, who will be directly involved in incubating the Scholastic Esports ecosystem in New England. So we hope that that can create a pipeline of students um, that we don't typically get. I only have 3 students in our program that are from Massachusetts. The rest are from around the world and the country. So what we really want to tap into is our local market, and I believe that that's one of the best solutions is actually getting high schools on board. But it's Discord DMs at 1 in the morning. It's Twitter. I mean, shoot, sometimes I'll even have to do an Instagram DM because that's the only way an international student's going to reach out to me. So there's a lot of ways to do it. And best practices is really just being honest. I never offer somebody a scholarship until they're accepted to the school. I'll say, like, hey, this is something we'd like to offer you, if you fit all the criteria. And, just being honest with them through the process. And, if they have questions about, other schools, just talking about the goods of everybody, what everybody has to offer. And, try not to really ever put anyone else down because, maybe they end up at the other program and then you're competing against them. So, just keeping it positive and upfront and honest.
And Chris, what practices do you or your program employ to find those top tier players?
Yeah, so like Bryan said, Bryan said that he just has a few students from Massachusetts. Kind of conversely, we have a lot of students from Michigan just based on kind of the history and the nature of our university, right? We're Michigan State University. We were founded as a university primarily to serve Michiganders. And so a lot of my recruiting is actually done within the state itself. Whether that's Michigan high schools that currently have programs or ones that don't, trying to find local Michigan talent that can help support our programs here, as well as reaching out to a few students that are outside of the Michigan borders. Um, but yeah, I think like what Bryan said was really important about building up local ecosystems. I think in the long term, as much as we as colleges and universities can help support local scholastic esports, whether that's within our state, within our city, within our region, that just helps everybody, right? Like the better the system is, the healthier the system is, the better for everyone. And so I think that that's a really important thing that we're focusing on here at Michigan State as well. You know, how can we help Michigan high school esports grow and develop? And I think that's something that most colleges and universities should be looking at.
Yeah, and Lucas, when you're trying to find those top tier players, do you find it difficult, or it's pretty easy to recruit for being in a private institution? I know I used to go to a private institution as well, so some people have thoughts and comments on that, but I don't know if you've hit any roadblocks with that or if it's basically the same thing.
Definitely hit roadblocks. It's not perfect by any means. Us being a Christian university in a very non-secular space of gaming is also a very big challenge. But there's a way to tap into specific specificities based off of your perspective as a recruiter or as a leader of this space. So it's definitely doable. I mean, I've been able to prove it so far, and we're continuing to do so. We're continuing to improve our different programs every single year. I could pretty much say that I've directly had a hand in recruiting over 100 students to the esports program because of esports only at the school. And I can confidently say I have lost no more than 5 to other schools through their tenure of being here. So my turnover is extremely low for being a high level competitive program. We're not really cutthroat. I don't cut people off a scholarship. I don't cut teams, anything like that. Given that they show up and they do what they need to get done. So recruiting, though, and finding those talents has really kind of shifted. Early on, it was very much me spending 60 hours a week going online, researching the different leagues and different ecosystems, trying to break my way into Twitter DM groups, into Discord private message groups, and stuff like that, and doing it. But now that I'm kind of in there and I've gotten a legacy built up at OC with our competitive results and our history and all that stuff, now it's kind of become more word of mouth and more of them seeking us out. And so we can be a lot more picky with who we bring on and a lot more challenging and be able to vet the students a lot higher rather than just kind of bringing someone in and really having to like coach them and make sure that they're a good fit, all that stuff after bringing them in. I can do that good fit check now beforehand. Being in person is a massive benefit to this too. Like especially during the turnover side, because I can sit there and level with them as a real human being. I can sit there and talk to them face to face. I can level with them what's going on. I can take them to their students, take the students to their professors or to student success or to the financial aid office or the registrar or anyone like that, and really get things done in a very quick, efficient, and real matter. And so having everything kind of be accessible in our 240-acre small campus here has been a blessing for what we need to do as a community and as a service. So recruiting is definitely a it's definitely not a one size fit all solution. There is no one size fits all solution. I've largely, like I said, tapped into a non-traditional out of state and international population. I know Brian definitely does this as well. We have 15 international students in my out of my 90 here, and my entire Rainbow Six Siege team, all 6 of them are from Brazil. So I've been able to find different pipelines from there. I have a new one that I'm building a connection with up in northern and central Europe, and so being able to kind of grow different international regions and provide them a quality high level education here and then go back and either or stay here and build up their career in the long term is a high level of benefit. But it's all about finding out what your strengths are, whether they be the intangibles, the immutables, or the actual esports side of what you're able to offer, and really tuning into those value adds. That's how I see it.
Thank you. And Chris, I know you touched upon resources before, and I know there's probably not a lot of people out there that have resources or expertise as you three. Do you have any advice for directors in younger programs with different resources? So yeah, do you have any advice for anyone younger? I know you're starting up now from a club, but it's a nice perspective from starting up from a club. What has happened?
Yeah, I think that like when I first started on kind of this like collegiate esports journey and like trying to figure out how to do recruiting and things like that, I think it's really important to think about how you're using your time when it comes to recruiting and work on things that are going to be an efficient use of your time. Um, like for example, for me, when I was working in Southeast Ohio, I very heavily focused on trying to recruit students that were within like a 50 to 100-mile radius, right? And that was just because those students were more likely to be aware of my university, know where we were, and kind of you got that built-in name brand recognition that went with it, right? So when talking to those students, I found that my success rate with being able to attract those students to the university was significantly higher than when I kind of got out that radius. And it's very easy with recruiting and all the different sites and options and things like that to just sink an enormous amount of time into doing it. But as we know, with directors and kind of the current state with collegiate esports, recruiting is just one of your responsibilities for most people that are running their programs, right? Like there's helping to manage the teams, helping to coach, social media, all those other things that are going on. Um, so being efficient with your recruiting time, I think, is really important. And that once again goes to the thing that I think has been said a few times is that just trying to figure out what the strengths of your program are and playing to your strengths, right? Figuring out what separates you from other programs and making sure that you're highlighting those programs. Because you want to not only find students that are a good fit for your program, but you want to find students that are a good fit for your university as well. I like that Lucas talked about retention rates. I think that that's really important with programs. If you're recruiting university first, esports second, regardless of how much playing time, little playing time, what's going on with your esports program, at the end of the day, they're going to be excited that they're at your university, right? Like even if I recruit somebody to my Rocket League team and they end up being on the second team versus the first team, if what got them excited about it was the fact that they were going to Michigan State, they're still going to be happy because they're going to Michigan State University. And that to me, like as somebody who's been a few different places, right? That's been really evident for me and how we do recruiting, and that even if I have left from place to place and somebody new has taken over, there hasn't been students that transfer out. They all stay there because they were excited to be at that university in the first place, right? Which I think is a really powerful thing. For us, we don't. I know Lucas and Bryan have much larger programs than I do from the varsity side. Part of that is because for us it's not about enrollment. It's not really about a marketing thing. People know who Michigan State is. um, for us, it's really about student experience. So we have a smaller varsity program, but we have a really large club program. So like our club is like 1,000 to 1,500 students that participate in that program. And so we focus on a little bit different things with what we're trying to do with our current efforts and current resources, um, just kind of how we spread those around.
It's actually interesting that you touch upon recruiting for the university first. I'm a little interested, Bryan, in your tactic of recruiting. Are you recruiting more for the program or for the university as a whole? Because I know Fisher College is probably not a large name out there, so I'm interested.
No, absolutely. That's a good question. I mean, obviously we're recruiting some students for university first, but our starting players on our rosters, I'm trying to get the best player possible that is able to get into school and is able to pass their classes. That's what I'm looking for my starting. I want to be the most competitive we can be. Outside of that, yeah, we're looking for higher academic standard students. If they're going to be coming here and playing on our JV or our club or managing teams, then we're definitely looking for that academically sound student. And that, we talk a lot about recruitment and just recruiting players, but, you know, my school and many other schools, you don't just have to be a player. You can be a manager, a coach, a team lead, whatever, broadcasting and production. So, there's so many ways to get involved that isn't just playing. And you know I wanted to touch on a couple points because it was like advice to younger people getting into the space. Don't be scared to say what you need, because these programs are starting, not at a school like Michigan, but like a smaller school. They're starting because they want recruitment, they want enrollment. So put your money where your mouth is. Give them so many students and too many students in your pipeline that they can't say no to you at that point, right? I've never had an issue with resources and things like that. So because we're bringing in 100, 200 students at a school that has 1,200 students. So that's if we make up 15 to 25% of the school, how can somebody say no at that point? And then it just helps get more resources and things along the lines of that. But to finally answer your question, I look for both. I look for program students though, in specific. So I've got a few that I'll shout out. Like, Jackson, for example. He's amazing. He's my head of broadcasting and production. He brought in a team of students this year himself that he wanted to work closely with to do all of our social media and broadcasting and production and casting and this and that and having students take some type of ownership into this. Really gets them involved. And, I'm sure that maybe one day he'll have a job at the school, whether it's with me or admissions or, something like that. So I try to get these skill sets out of them and, give this as a playing field for them to use. So, what other person is going to say, hey, go recruit your friends that you want to work with and, we'll get something going. So, a lot of it is that's how we operate here.
And I know directors are constantly getting solicited on paying for recruiting services. Lucas, how crucial are these services for the average program in 2023?
Really loaded but good question. So, paid recruiting services, it depends. I mean, the core question and answer is it depends. But there are so many factors that you need to think of from your own standpoint as a program, as an esports program in college. What your main goals are, what your target audience is, what your quota, quote unquote, is, your metrics for success, your KPIs. Knowing that first, then you can try to find a service that best fits you for recruiting if you can't just simply do it yourself. For the first 2 years as I was recruiting, I did it literally basically all myself. Everyone's, at least in this space, has probably at least heard of Stay Plugged In. We got on board with them really early on, and for the first literal year and a half, I had 0 students turn out from that. But then last year, as we built a legacy and I recruited and did everything on my back end myself, I got over 15, I think 15 or 16 students from that service, and so it vastly paid off for what it was. But um, it really just depends, and like there are so many different types of services as well besides just that one. There's elite commission based services that are just geared towards the students paying and then giving a commission based off of the scholarship that they get. I've heard of things like that. I work with 2 pipelines, one in Brazil, one North Central Europe, that are commission based off of the students as well, but for the family. And so it all really just depends on what services kind of best fit you and best fit what you want to do. But I really genuinely don't think that there's a service out there that is too expensive for what it's worth, at least from the mainstream ones that I've seen. But also, it's you don't really have to have a service to recruit and to build your own local pipeline. Most schools in esports that aren't playing like top 10 of their different games are really focused on the local side of things. Like Chris was definitely talking about that and focused on his local side of things. And so talking about and looking at your local pipelines and how you can kind of integrate yourself into esports into your existing local pipelines, and then creating a parallel pipeline that is dedicated for esports as a new value add is super important. But at the end of the day, you really have to make sure that your school and the university itself, all the core stats are good, and that you're talking about that to the students, talking about like your national and average acceptance rate, graduation rate, job placement rate for your degree, all that stuff, and making sure that you're fitting the student that needs to go there, that really would benefit from going to your university. So for us, we have like a 60% graduation rate, and the school itself has a 78% retention rate. But in my program, the value that I bring in for esports, I know that my esports retention rate is 92%, almost 15% extra. And then my graduation rate, well, we've only been here for 4 years, but everyone that's been recruited and has stayed on has graduated. So far is 100%. I know Brian was mentioning how big his esports program is compared to the college. Ours is somewhat similar. We have 1,600 undergrad and we have 90 in esports, roughly. And so we're like 5% of the total university undergraduate population. Like his is definitely much higher, not gonna lie. But the scale and the scope of it is definitely still there. So these services, they come and go. Just find what best fits for you. I personally think that you really shouldn't turn any of them down until you really understand what they're there for and what they are to serve you the best. If recruiting is your goal, of course.
And before we start to wrap up, I'm just gonna ask if Twitch viewers, if you have any questions, hop them up in the chat, and if we have time at the end, I could ask them. If not, then we will be having a 5 o'clock discussion in our Discord. So if nothing is answered here, we could definitely move that to Discord later. But with that being said, Brian, how can a program appeal to administration to create an environment for success when it comes to recruiting?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of answered it a little bit earlier, but the appeal, and I'll talk about small colleges only because in Christopher's case, it's always completely different at a big state school. But how can we appeal? It's find what the school's looking for. What do they want to fill in the gaps with? And if it's esports, then what type of student do they want? Do they want national exposure? Do they want 20 students in a program and call it a day and throw 10 computers in a lab? You really got to identify what it is that they want. So you know when it comes to recruiting, the successes, you know, I always say it this way: just get more leads than your admissions department can generate in a year on your own. And if you can do that, whether they convert or not, um, there's really not going to be many questions asked to you. And if you're sitting there and a school really wants recruitment and you got to hit these quotas and things like that, hit those quotas and succeed that. Like, don't recruit 10 students in a year and expect to get all this funding because you're only bringing in a couple $100,000. You can't do much with that. Bring in 100 students, it's a different story. Like for me, for example, we started in a room, or two classrooms. We had 30 computers between it with 68 on campus kids. The rest were online. It got a little bit tight, so then now we expand to 80 computers and it's almost a 1-to-1 ratio. And the next year moving forward, we're building out a 15,000 square foot facility. I'm kind of hinting at something. So you know things like that evolve from recruitment, retention, doing the right things, um, and really doing it for the student at the end of the day. So like, similar to Lucas and Chris, we don't lose many students. The only time we really lose a student is one, they can't afford it, or two, they get poached and get a better offer. And it's like, great, go enjoy your full ride to college. That's really the only time we're losing a student. So, you know, just get administration on board. And I actually heard Dan Clerky say it yesterday, like, don't be scared to raise hell in these meetings. Like, just do your thing, say what you need, get what you need, and do it for the students at the end of the day. So
And Chris, do you have any advice for the audience going into recruitment? Not even just for younger programs, but in general. Oh no, did we lose Chris? I
frozen
guess
in a
Lucas, if you
beautiful
want
state though.
to, Lucas, if you want to take it first.
You wanna repeat the question?
Yeah, yeah. I'm just asking if you have advice for the audience on recruitment or not.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm just gonna repeat kind of what I said. Is like
Hmm.
just know what your personal goals are. Know what the administration, your supervisors, all of them know what they expect out of you and out of your program, and be able to match and, like Bryan said, definitely exceed that. So like Chris Postel's trend report every year comes out, and you see like what the national average growth is on each program, all that kind of stuff. And I think the last time it was like 14 different students, like 14 new additional students per esports program on a year-over-year basis. And then for at least for me and Bryan especially, we're definitely way past that. And so being able to use that as an advantage and then cite that and be able to kind of go into a meeting with the confidence that you know your shit and you know what to do from a growth standpoint, which is really, really massive. At the end of the day, every university, even ours being a private not for profit, is a business at the end of the day. There's monetary costs involved, there's transactions involved, all that stuff. And recruiting is by far the most important part of the university from a business standpoint. So being able to know what you're doing and know that you're passing the national average, you're doing more than the admissions office themselves could do. All of that stuff is amazing. I think that's really, really good advice. But also, again, know what your boundaries are. Like, if your administration looks at the students you bring in, are like, oh, these are students that all live within 20 minutes of campus, they could have came here anyways, we were already on their radar, how is esports the value benefit from this? Being able to target some students outside of that, or being able to know how to position those recruits to say that these are esports specific and they would not have come to this university if not for esports. Knowing that kind of guardrail is very, very important to making sure that the university and your administration especially understand that this is a esports specific value add. So I would very, very much just kind of focus on that guardrail.
And we have Chris back with us. Chris, I'm gonna
W.
ask you the question I asked before. Do you have advice, last minute advice for everyone watching?
Yeah, I think what Bryan said was really important, which is kind of understanding the why in your program, and that what is something that is up you and the people around, the people above you. Like I've been at a few different universities and colleges now, and each one had a reason for why they were creating their esports program. So understanding what the goals of your program are, what success looks like for your university, that allows you to create a game.
Thank you, Chris.
Dude, his books are just too strong, man. Those books are just blocking the internet. I swear to God.
It's all the books. It's okay, Chris. And before we wrap up, Bryan, you actually had a question from the chat. What is the biggest benefit of having a student worker / staff helping recruit and manage teams?
I mean, there's a lot of benefits to it. If I don't have to spend 15 hours a week managing game schedules and registrations and things like that, that's 15 more hours that I can go get funding or another student or get money for a land, things like that. I mean, students run the world. This all started from clubs, anyways. And, we're lucky enough that this became an industry. So, the value to it is, I can't even describe it. I wouldn't have been able to do what we did last year without like 5 specific students. I'll give them a shout out: Natalie, Parker, Jackson, Kevin, Will and Ian. So like those people, they really were the backbone to the program for the students. Managing day-to-day tasks. Well, I went out and grinded and did everything business related. So it's a true added value for sure.
And so I'm going to conclude here. Thank you all for joining us today and showing and sharing your experiences and what your recruitment tactics are and all your little secrets. Probably not a lot of them, but yeah. So everyone watching, please stay on for our next panel about community programming. And just a reminder, at 5:00 we are going to be moving to the Discord to have after panel discussions. If anyone has leftover questions, we will be hopping in there and wanting to hear from everyone. So thank you, Lucas, Bryan, and Chris for joining me today.
Thank y'all.